In our last video, we looked at graphing linear inequalities, and we saw that we had a three-step process. We were going to write with an equal sign, write the inequality with an equal sign instead of an inequality, graph that line, and then use a test point. And in this video, we're going to look at what happens if the line goes directly through the origin. How can we graph that line? And how can we do a test point? So let's say that I have the inequality 3x is less than or equal to 4y. Our first step is going to be, I know it's a linear inequality because the x and the y are both to the first power. I know it's an inequality because I have a less than or equal to. So my first step is to write with an equal sign and then graph that line. And there's a couple of ways I could do this. I could graph this line by just finding a couple of ordered pairs, or I could get it into y equals mx plus b form and graph it that way. So I can do that either way. I'm going to go ahead and let you graph that line using either of those methods, and then turn the video back on. Okay, I'm going to graph this by first of all trying to find the x and the y intercepts. To do that, I'm going to let x equal 0 and solve for y. So I will have 3 times 0 equals 4y. So 0 equals 4y, so y equals 0. So I have the ordered pair 0, 0. What this tells me is that this line goes directly through the origin. The x and the y intercept are the same number. So if I put y in for 0 in for y, I would get x equals 0, and I just get the same point back. So what I'm going to do is just find some other point that's on the line, some other ordered pair, x and y, that make this a true statement. I don't want to have to graph fractions here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to think ahead. If I let x equal some number, then my next step is going to be to divide by the 4 to get y by itself. So if I let x actually equal 4 and find y, when I do my next step, when I divide by 4, it divides evenly. So the reason I used the 4 was so when I divided by 4, I would get an integer. So I'm going to let x equal 4 and y equals 3, and I can plot that ordered pair. If you used the y equals mx plus b method, you would have gotten the same thing. You would have gotten your 0, 0 was your y-intercept, or excuse me, your y-intercept, because there is no plus b, so that means b is 0. And then you would have had that your slope was 3/4, so you went up 3 and over 4, and you would have gotten the exact same point. All right, so we've graphed the line. Now we look back at our inequality here, and we see we do have the equal sign here, so we draw a solid line. Okay, now we need to figure out our half plane. Which side of this line makes this a true statement? In our last video, we looked at using a test point, and we used the ordered pair 0, 0 just because it was an easy point to plug in and do the algebra. I cannot use 0, 0 here because it is on the line. It has to be definitely on one side or the other. So I need to choose a point that is definitely on one side or the other. I am going to use the point 1, 0. just to make my numbers easy and because it's not anywhere near the line. I don't want to use a point like 1, 1 because depending upon how good of a grapher I am, that point could be on either side. So I want something that's far away from the line. And I'm going to use the test point 1, 0. So that means I plug it back into the original inequality. And I'm seeing if that's a true statement. So I have 3 is less than or equal to 0. And we know that that is false. 3 is not less than or equal to 0. So that means the point 1, 0 is not on the side that I want. So I want everything on the other side, going away from that ordered pair. And I have solved my inequality. In our next video, we're going to look at graphing vertical and horizontal lines. We can do those using a much easier method. The last two this video and the previous video, all of our lines were oblique. They were slanty. They had an X and a Y in the inequality. In our next video, we will look at graphing vertical and horizontal inequalities.